Hiya guys, Fern here. Me and my partner Fur run a page over on TikTok centered all around animals and our planet. But today we got something brand new for you. We're going to be building a zoo in Planet Zoo featuring a bunch of animals in our cozy critter catalog. If you're interested in which animals that might be sure to go check it out, and without any further ado, let's hop straight into it. Of course, we had to start somewhere, and that somewhere was the pathing. The pathing we actually designed beforehand. We made a map in MS Paint, which you're going to see right now, that actually features the three main habitats that are going to start our entrance plaza. The first habitat I'm going to be building is the one that's the main ticket item, the centerpiece, the first thing you see when you walk in, because I personally love it when you walk into a zoo and you instantly get greeted with an aviary, a small, simple enclosure, something that instantly grabs your attention but also makes you feel like you're part of the zoo, not just paying for the experience. The enclosure is going to be quite simple. It's just going to be filled with natural rocks and a simple barrier. But at the back of the enclosure, we do feature a cave that doubles as hard shelter and a viewing area for our guests. So our animals can hide away when it's rainy, but our guests can also have a little bit of a peer into the lives of our animals. Also, what I do in every enclosure is make the information slash education area a little bit more interesting than just an education stand on two legs. I like to make it feel like it's actually part of the enclosure and not just slapped on there. Because this is franchise mode, we of course have to think about our guests, and what's the first thing that you want when you go to a zoo? Well, good restrooms, because you're going to be walking around there all day. You can't just be standing there wanting to go to the restroom without any restrooms there. So that's the first thing we built right in front of our staff area too, to kind of mask that we have it back there and distract our guests from that. As I just said, the staff area is going to be right here. Right now it's going to be pretty bare, but that's because I needed to really quickly place it down to actually start working in the zoo and trading in the animals. But as you'll notice in later in this episode, there actually will be some nice designs for there. Like actually the same designs as the toilets, but it's going to be a little bit flared up. Right then, we decided to order our first animal, the first creature from our Cozy Critter catalog, the African spurred tortoise. I was so excited, so I bought them and I instantly wanted to place them down, and I ran into my first issue of this playthrough. I forgot my staff. I play Planet Zoo a lot, and no matter how much I play, I always forget to hire staff before I place my animals. So we did that, hired everyone, and while we were waiting for them to bring in our tortoises, we decided to work on our next amenities. The next amenities are going to be a food, drink, and information kiosk. If I can be honest, I'm really proud of this design. It looks the same as the restrooms, but it has that flair that you want from a shop with the little logos and stuff. Of course, because we're a actual franchise, so we need it to be viable. So we placed trash cans, donation bins in the colors of the Fern Fur logo, and benches, which I admittedly spent an embarrassing amount of time trying to figure out which ones I wanted. Then lastly, we linked up our education, finished that up, and greeted our first little buddies. I said hi to them and instantly got on to making their enclosure. The African tortoise is actually one of, if not the largest species found in mainland Africa, and they can live for up to 70 years if cared for properly. They naturally come from the dry grasslands and desert edges of the Sahara, where temperatures can get ridiculously hot, so this enclosure needed to be pretty open but also feature enough trees to give them the shade that they naturally look for. And these guys are apparently very strong. They can push around rocks and change up their habitats in zoos, even open some barriers if you're not careful. So that's something that we don't specifically have to keep in mind, but it's something fun that I kind of designed around, with giving them a lot of rocks to push and play with. And that about wraps up our first habitat. And that not only wraps up our first habitat, but also our first day of building. I said bye to our little tortoises and saw that we got our first baby in our park, which is always a very exciting moment. The next day, I logged in and saw that we completed a community challenge, which gave us 100 free eco points. That's amazing because we can spend it on some better animals. And I just instantly hopped into building the next habitat. The next habitat is going to be our entrance to our first part of the world. As I think most of you know, every zoo that you go to, or at least almost every zoo, does this where you walk through parts of the world. Let's say you walk through the land of the rising sun or the land down under, and this is going to be our introduction to that part of our park. It's going to loop back around in a big circle eventually, but this is our main entranceway. I actually want to try something new out, which is an indoor viewing slash education area. I'm really proud of how it turned out, but right now it doesn't look like much, but I assure you it's going to be very nice. I'm not going to be talking the entire time. I know that can get a little annoying, so I'm going to give you guys a little time to just relax and look at our build. One issue I personally come across a lot when I'm playing Planet Zoo is making cubes. I make my enclosures and my buildings too symmetrical, so I try to divide that up with adding little things against the wall to make it look a little more real and not as symmetrical. As I told you guys, this indoor area is going to double as a viewing area, but also as an education area. We're going to have an educator stand here who's going to be talking about the animals, have some educational speakers, have a bench to be able to sit down, and the educational board is also going to be in here, but also one outside for the people who don't want to go inside, a donation box, and now we're going to give it away. The people who paid good attention are actually already going to know which animal it is, but now you know for sure. The animal that this enclosure is for the North Island brown kiwi. As the outside was wrapping up, I ordered our two little kiwis with those eco points that I got today, and instantly placed them in our enclosure to get ready to build their actual habitat with the foliage and our terraforming. Kiwis are native to New Zealand and are probably one of the weirdest birds on the planet in the best possible way. They're completely flightless, mostly nocturnal, and instead of relying on good eyesight like most birds, they actually rely on their sense of smell. This sense of smell is so good because their nostrils are at the tip of their beak. This makes it very easy for them to smell out bugs and worms under the ground and plug them out from there. Sadly though, kiwis are actually endangered because of introduced predators like stoats, cats and dogs that have heavily impacted the kiwi population in New Zealand, so conservation and breeding programs have been very crucial there right now. But there's one little bit of a bright side. There is a kiwi that is very famous, and I hope I'm pronouncing this name correctly, Paora, at the Smithsonian National Zoo that became weirdly famous purely because he looks really grumpy in his pictures. like I said in the beginning of the video, our education areas are always going to be a little bit special because I want them to be integrated into the enclosure. I linked up all the education areas, made sure that everything was up and running, and installed one crucial sign, the be quiet sign, because kiwis are naturally really shy when it comes to humans, so we don't want their little buddies to get scared. Now with our second habitat wrapped up, I'd like to introduce you guys to our two kiwis, Apple and her partner Lime. I gotta say, again, really proud of this enclosure. I tried something entirely new, and that's working with the decals to make the wood look more old and weathered, and I gotta say, it turned out really nice. On to day 3, where we started off by revamping our staff area in that style of our restrooms and guest amenities. This style really suits the type of vibe that I am going for with the entire zoo, and it also feels more lively than just a couple of plaster buildings brought down. For this next habitat, I wanted to go for a little bit of a realistic style, and the next animal is the red panda. In real life zoos, they actually give these animals a bunch of netting to make sure they don't escape and climb out of there. And I tried to replicate that with the mesh and the fences, but there was one big problem. It had the opposite effect. While building it out, I noticed that one of our red pandas just climbed up on the barrier and was out of there. So we had one big issue. And I spent hours to make this barrier work, but I just couldn't. So I decided to go for a different type of look. I'm actually going to try to make this look more like an old rundown temple, because this is our next introduction to our next part of the world. The only special thing I did here was add a little bit of a waterfall, which is again something I've never done. I'm trying to challenge myself in these builds too. And with that done, we could get started on actually building the enclosure as I saw it in the beginning, before my entire mishap with the barriers. Red pandas are native to mountainous forests of the Himalayas and southwestern China, where the climate is usually much cooler and foggier, and that might explain why they have their red coloration to actually stand out. Despite their names, they actually aren't closely related to giant pandas at all, and are much closer related to weasels and raccoons. Most of their diet is bamboo, and unlike giant pandas, they are actually excellent climbers, which is why in Planet Zoo you actually have to feature a lot of climbing structures like I'm building right now. And they use their big fluffy tails during the cold times to warm up, kind of like scarves, which in my eyes just makes them even more adorable. While wrapping up this build, I noticed that they were protesters, but as soon as I placed down the climbing structure, they all just vanished because they were just impatient. And I even noticed a very large crowd, so that means people are excited to see our next residents. Wrapping up the enclosure, I did a little bit more decorating, made my education area, like I say, always has to be a little bit special, and just finished up with the small little details. I could do this forever, but sometimes my partner has to say, stop it looks good. With that, the big builds of this episode have actually been wrapped up. There are a couple more things that I've done, like placed signs that I got of the Steam Workshop from the very talented creator, I hope I'm pronouncing this right again, Anik Mandra. I'm putting the link in the description for the people interested in that. And lastly, I placed 2 little exhibits featuring the Gila monster and the axolotl. I don't have time to give you facts for those, but if you're interested, be sure to go check out our TikTok page because they are featured in our Cozy Critter catalog, like every animal in this park. And now we've come to the end of our first episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. I really enjoyed doing this. I really enjoyed teaching you guys about animals. I really enjoyed building these habitats. And I really enjoyed seeing all these animals just walk around in these enclosures. They actually feel alive and they feel like we can actually touch them. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If so, leave a like, maybe subscribe. If you subscribe, definitely ring that bell. And thank you. I gotta say, really, thank you so much for watching. See you next time, and have a nice day.